In my first life, my sister's son forced paraquat down my throat while choking me. When I awoke again, I had returned to the moment before my sister's death, when she begged me to take in Zhang Peng. But this time, I only wanted to live well. Sister, please, I beg you, I pleaded. Seeing my frail sister on the hospital bed, my heart wrenched as if struck by lightning, and I shot to my feet. Sister still has a child. No matter what his father says, it's not my place as his aunt to raise him. My voice trembled as I stared at the fair-skinned, seemingly well-behaved boy sitting beside her. His name was Zhang Peng. A flicker of fear flashed in my eyes. Who would believe that a 24-year-old woman could be terrified of a 6-year-old child? But my death had been too agonizing. Even now, my body remembered the sensation of organ failure, the blood I had coughed up after drinking paraquat, all because of Zhang Peng. Sister Yuya has never begged you for anything before. He's your own nephew. Yu Xian's face was deathly pale. I forced composure, recalling how her pleas had softened my heart in my past life. Back then, Zhang Peng had seemed so obedient that I agreed to raise him. Outraged by his father's absence, I had deemed the man unworthy of fatherhood. In a moment of impulsiveness, I promised my sister I would take her son in, only for that child to become my executioner. I've texted your husband. He'll be here soon. This time, I refused to repeat my mistakes. Yu Xian's wide, unblinking eyes made me fear she would die with regrets. Auntie, I'll be good, Zhang Peng piped up. He gazed at me pitifully. I don't believe a word you say, I thought. I died by your hands in my last life. You have a father, listen to him, not me. I'm just a fragile woman with my own mess to deal with. I can't take proper care of you. I avoided his outstretched hand. Those small fingers that would one day choke the life out of me. Years later, those same hands would clamp around my throat. Cough, cough. Yu Xian's painful hacking drew my attention. I caught Zhang Peng's fleeting glare before he turned away. Sorry I'm late. My brother-in-law, Zhang Kading, finally arrived. Daddy. Zhang Peng rushed to cling to his leg. What happened? Why is she suddenly critical? Panic etched Kading's face. When the doctor summoned me to settle the bill, I stepped out, only to realize I'd left my phone on the ward's chair. As I reached for the door, a child's voice rang out. Mom and Dad are useless. Can I get a new mom? Chills erupted across my skin. But what shocked me more was Kading's response. If you behave, Auntie might take you home. So he was the one who'd marked me as the target from the start. Will Auntie become my new mom? Zhang Peng's excitement was palpable. If she agrees to take you, then yes, Kading replied. Disgusting. I trembled with fury. What a sanctimonious hypocrite. My sister hadn't even drawn her last breath, yet he was already scheming. She deserved better. Yuya will agree. After all, I'm her only sister. I retracted my earlier sympathy. She deserved this, dying at the hands of these two monsters. It's your fault. You wouldn't buy me a burger. Zhang Peng snapped. But you still shouldn't have put rat poison in Mom's medicine, Kading chided, without a trace of real reproach. That poison smelled sweet. Mom's not a rat, it won't hurt her. So I put in 2 whole packets. Zhang Peng boasted. My blood ran cold. So Yu Xian's hospitalization was her son's doing. Yu Xin 又开始咳嗽，伴随着呵呵声。我扭头就去找医生，不管怎么样，人命关天。Yet I was too late. The rat poison finished what her weakened body couldn't withstand. Yu Xian was gone before they could pump her stomach. Through tear-blurred vision, I watched Kading sign the death certificate. Just like that, Yu Xian became a corpse, then ashes. 3 days later. Yuya, you know how it is. A man isn't as attentive as a woman. Zhang Peng will only stay with you for a week. I'll take him back once my business trip ends. Okay. Kading's pleading expression mirrored Zhang Peng's upturned face. One the picture of refinement, the other of innocence. Bao rose in my throat. Just take him for now. His father will fetch him later. What demon spawned these two? Your brother-in-law's a poor soul. Lost his wife so young. I turned to find Lin Xueping, the busybody from downstairs. With a child so small, and a man needing to work, it's hard. Family should help family. Her sanctimonious advice made my jaw clench. Kading's conflicted act was laughable. My sister's body wasn't even cold, yet he'd already spread the news, even here. Auntie, since you're so concerned, why don't you take him? My brother-in-law can pay you. I forced a smile. I've just landed a job. I can't juggle work and childcare. Last time, I'd quit my new job out of pity for the motherless boy, draining my savings to raise him. Never again. Zhang Kading, this hypocrite who says one thing and does another, always talks sweetly. Every time he comes to see the child, he only buys some inexpensive snacks, and never mentions the actual living expenses. How foolish I was. It's only now that I realize I've been raising his child for free. And in the end, I didn't even meet a good end. In my previous life, several of my relationships ended without any clear cause. This makes me suspect that Zhang Peng and Zhang Kating might have been meddling in the middle. After all, if I got married, I definitely wouldn't take Zhang Peng to live with me. Thinking of this, the anger in my heart intensified a bit more. This child of yours is really heartless. You won't even lend a hand. How heartbroken your sister must be in the underworld. Lin Xueping's words made a glint of fierceness flash across my eyes. Who the hell is this old woman? What right does she have to interfere in my affairs? So since Auntie has a kind heart, I'll leave the child to you. Zhang Peng quickly called Grandma Lin. Look how much she dotes on you. I forced a smile, pointing at Lin Xueping. Zhang Kating didn't expect me to directly pass the buck to someone else. I was being hasty. I'm sorry, Yiya. I was just desperate and grasping at straws. Zhang Kating smiled helplessly. Zhang Peng also looked dejected, with tears in his eyes. He's really good at acting. If I hadn't witnessed Zhang Peng's cruelty when he killed me when he grew up, no one would know that this well-behaved and pitiful appearance of the child now is all an act. Then come to Grandma's place. Grandma has a lot of toys and delicious food at home. And there are also older sisters and younger brothers who can play with you. Lin Xueping couldn't stand it anymore. Plus, I had just said that Zhang Kating was rich. Everyone knows that Lin Xueping is notoriously stingy. Zhang Kating surely doesn't know this. After all, he doesn't live in the same community as me. When I was in college, I started a business by writing novels and made a small fortune, 200,000 yuan to be exact. This is a rented house. However, I never told my sister about this money. She only knew that I had good grades and could earn 3,000 yuan a month from part-time jobs. That's really great. Zhang Peng quickly called Grandma. Grandma is kind-hearted and will take care of you. As long as your father pays the living expenses. I promptly and neatly pushed Zhang Peng in front of Lin Xueping. Brother-in-law, Auntie is very nice. You can rest assured. Just send the living expenses directly to her. I was eager to go out. How much is the living expenses? You two can talk about this matter. With an embarrassed and annoyed expression, Zhang Kating was left there as I scurried away. When I came back, Zhang Kating and Zhang Peng were already gone. Since my sister's affairs were settled, I changed the password lock when I got home. Originally, my sister's fingerprint was recorded on the door lock. Now that she's no longer here, naturally there's no need to worry about her fingerprint being able to unlock the door. So, I only changed the numerical password. Suddenly my phone vibrated. It was actually a message from Zhang Kating. Yuya, Zhang Peng will stay at the aunt downstairs from you for the next few days. If possible, please also keep an eye on him. He really left the child at someone else's house. How could he be so careless as to leave his own son with a stranger he had known for less than half an hour? But then, thinking that Zhang Peng had extreme behavioral problems, I felt relieved. Why should I worry? It should be Lin Xueping who should be worried. Sure enough, the next day when I got off work and came home, before I even opened the door, Zhang Peng suddenly rushed out from the stairs. Auntie, I really want to live with you. His eyes were red, as if he had just cried. I was very curious. It was quite remarkable to be able to make Zhang Peng cry. What's wrong? Didn't your father entrust Grandma Lin downstairs to take care of you? I stopped unlocking the door, not wanting to let Zhang Peng in. Auntie is my family. Zhang Peng looked at me pitifully, looking at the door lock from time to time. In my previous life, I let you in. In this life, there's no way. Then Auntie will buy you something delicious. Isn't it just a hamburger? Thinking of how Yu Xin was poisoned to death by this ungrateful wretch because of a hamburger, my head felt dizzy. The key thing was that Yu Xin didn't even blame Zhang Peng. Even when I heard that she was poisoned to death, what the doctor told me was that Yu Xin had lost hope, had a depressive episode, and had taken medicine to commit suicide. If I hadn't been reborn, I felt sorry for my brother-in-law for having a hard time. I never expected that it was his own choice. Really? Auntie is still the best to me. Zhang Peng was still easy to deceive at this time. After all, he was only 6 years old. However, at the same time, I also felt a chill in my bones. Because this child had personally poisoned his mother to death. At the fast food restaurant, I ordered him a whole bunch of hamburgers and fries. Zhang Peng's eyes were shining. His stomach was not good, and my sister usually controlled his diet at home. I couldn't get up at 4 a.m. just to make nutritious breakfast for Zhang Peng. Nor could I calmly face Zhang Peng's two-faced nature, who could manipulate people at such a young age. For the sake of my own safety, the best thing was to have less contact with him. Auntie, the room at that grandma's house is so messy and stinky. Can I sleep with you today? Zhang Peng looked at me full of anticipation. He thought that me taking him to eat hamburgers and fries meant that I accepted him to live with me. Well, Auntie is very busy recently, and will often work overtime. I can't take care of you. My expression was no different from usual, but my hand under the table was already tightly clenched into a fist. I will never let a wolf into the house. Zhang Peng lowered his head, not knowing what he was thinking. Have you eaten enough? Let's go home. Otherwise, Grandma will be worried that she can't find you. Anyway, I had already paid. Since Lin Xueping had received the money, she had to do a good job. Along the way, Zhang Peng didn't talk to me anymore. He just followed behind, carrying a few packaged hamburgers. When I got home, I found that Lin Xueping was craning her neck to look at me. You took the child away without saying a word. You really worried me to death, Lin Xueping complained. Wasn't there anyone at home? Just left him alone at home. Didn't you receive the money? Is this how you take care of a child? I'll tell my brother-in-law that you don't know how to take care of a child at all, and ask you to return the money to him. I glared at her, speaking harshly. I just left for a while. It's okay for the child to watch TV at home. Lin Xueping felt a bit guilty. Grandma, you went out to play mahjong. I heard you talking on the phone, Zhang Peng suddenly said. I looked at Lin Xueping with a half smile. I knew she liked playing mahjong. Otherwise, her eldest granddaughter wouldn't have been scalded on half of her face when she couldn't find anyone to pour water because she was thirsty and reached for the thermos herself. What do you know, you child? Come back quickly and have dinner. I didn't believe that Lin Xueping didn't see the food bag in Zhang Peng's hand, which had pictures of hamburgers and fries on it. Seeing that I didn't budge, Zhang Peng could only follow Lin Xueping downstairs. Then I turned around to enter the password and unlock the door. But I subconsciously looked back again. I saw that Zhang Peng was just looking in my direction. His eyes were gloomy. Perhaps he didn't expect me to turn around suddenly, and that gloomy look didn't have time to change. I turned my head and didn't look at him anymore. I entered the door and closed it directly. But the moment I entered the door, I slumped to the ground. I had seen that look in Zhang Peng's eyes before. It was on the day he killed me. I would never forget it. He was grinning at me saying, I told you that when I grow up, I will kill you. I originally thought that by getting rid of Zhang Peng, this hot potato, and as long as I didn't have frequent contact with him in the future, there would be no trouble. But unexpectedly the trouble still came. Today was the third day of my work. The property management of the community suddenly called me and asked me to rush home immediately. There was an urgent matter. You'd better come back and see for yourself what the specific matter is. The property management seemed hesitant to speak. I watched as the phone was quickly hung up. I had a bad feeling in my heart and could only rush back in a hurry. My poor baby chicks that I just bought. How could this be? Before I even reached the upstairs, I heard Lin Xueping's shrill cry. This isn't a child. This is a little devil. Take him away quickly. There were also some unprintable curses mixed in. I quickened my pace and went upstairs, finally stopping on Lin Xueping's floor. Because the scene was horrible. A dozen fluffy yellow baby chicks were bloody and scattered everywhere. Take this child away quickly. If you want the money back, forget it. He destroyed my baby chicks. Consider it compensation. Lin Xueping pointed at the dead baby chicks on the ground, her eyes red. Zhang Peng stood aside with his head down motionless. He started it. His voice was small and hard to hear clearly. Zhang Peng, did you really do all this? I deliberately pretended not to hear. Zhang Peng raised his head, his eyes full of anger. So what if I did? This old woman snatched my hamburgers and took a bite of each one, and then threw them away. What's wrong with killing these little beasts? Those who snatch my things have to pay the price. Zhang Peng even stomped on the already dead baby chicks a few times. It made my eyelids twitch. It was so scary. Lin Xueping had stimulated this child to turn to the dark side in advance. He was originally a bad seed, and now it directly accelerated the process of his becoming worse. No wonder no one wants you, you little brat. You deserve it that your father doesn't want you either. You're a born piece of trash. Lin Xueping became even more hysterical when she saw Zhang Peng's actions. In the past, only she had the right to throw tantrums. Now this child as small as Zhang Peng dared to challenge her. It completely challenged her authority. I'll call my brother-in-law over. I don't care about this mess. Although Zhang Peng's actions were really cruel now. Come on. I'm not afraid of him. Let him see what kind of a person his son really is. Lin Xueping wasn't intimidated at all. She was even eager for a fight. Zhang Peng's eyes suddenly turned towards Lin Xueping, dark and deep, a bit too profound for a child. It made my hair stand on end. However, Lin Xueping thought that Zhang Peng was provoking her. You little bastard. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? After saying that, Lin Xueping scratched Zhang Peng. Yes, I was stunned. Zhang Peng's fair face was scratched, and blood was oozing out. It looked very serious. Oh, Auntie, what are you doing? It's too much to hit a child. The property management staff who came to mediate felt dizzy. They had never seen such a shameless person. An old woman, hitting a child as soon as she made a move. He destroyed my things, and I still fed him well. Why should I spoil him? A child without a mother. What's so arrogant about him? This was completely different from when she had earnestly said that a child without a mother was Sokolan. How venomous Lin Xueping's words were now could be seen from Zhang Peng's reaction. But he didn't say a word. He just stared at Lin Xueping with those dark eyes. Okay, let's deal with this situation first. It's really creepy to look at. I tried to smooth things over. To be honest, I really didn't want to get involved. But the property management had called me several times. Plus, Lin Xueping was shouting that this child had something to do with me. Auntie, do you think I'm wrong? Zhang Peng spoke for the first time since just now. I subconsciously didn't look into his eyes. You caused trouble again. Before I could say anything, Zhang Peng suddenly let out an angry shout, and then was slapped hard. The force was so great that just hearing the sound made one feel the pain. Zhang Peng rushed over in a hurry. Then I realized something was wrong. This person said he was going on a business trip. Why did he come back as soon as I sent a message, saying that Zhang Peng had caused trouble, and something big had happened? The only possibility was that Zhang Peng hadn't gone on a business trip at all. I secretly sized up Zhang Peng a few times. When I saw his neck, I immediately understood. There were ambiguous red marks. And there was also the smell of cheap perfume when he first arrived. He must have been fooling around with some woman. He seems to find his own son a nuisance. Are you really this child's father? How could you be so brutal? The property manager was astonished. Lin Xueping hitting a child was already strange enough. But unexpectedly, the person called for help was even more ruthless. Zhang Peng's mouth was bleeding, and he was slapped to the ground. His face was smeared with the blood of the baby chicks. His eyes were a bit unfocused, dazed from the blow. Zhang Peng, I told you to be obedient. I told you to be a good boy. Zhang Keting gritted his teeth, his forehead veins bulging. Yuya, I said Zhang Peng should follow you. After all, you're his aunt. He listens to you. Zhang Keting suddenly turned around and looked at me. I was so angry that I laughed. His own son has nothing to do with me. Zhang Keting is really out of his mind. If Zhang Peng has XYY syndrome, then this father is truly terrifying to think about. I can't imagine what kind of life Zhang Peng has had in the past 7 years. Back then, Yu Xin got married because of her pregnancy. On the surface, Zhang Keting seemed very affectionate towards her. At least that's how it looked to me. Now that I think about it, every time I asked Yu Xin how she was, and if she had time to go shopping, she always said she was doing okay. She always said she had to take care of the child and had no time. Was it really because she was busy or was she afraid? Unfortunately, Yu Xin is no longer here, and I have no way to ask. Suddenly, I felt a bit regretful. My relationship with my sister wasn't harmonious, because from childhood, our parents doted on her more. Our relationship didn't improve until our parents died in a car accident a year ago. Ordinary people don't have much inheritance. And besides, it was the two of them who were driving in the wrong direction. We couldn't blame others. In the end, they were only compensated a few tens of thousands of yuan symbolically. Of course, I didn't take a single cent of that money. Yu Xin took it all. Brother-in-law, you know I just graduated not long ago. I still have a childish mindset. No matter how obedient Zhang Peng is, I can't take care of him as carefully as my sister. I twitched the corners of my mouth. When I mentioned Yu Xin, a shadow flashed across Zhang Keting's eyes. Forget it. I don't blame you. Let's just leave it at that. Zhang Keting roughly pulled Zhang Peng up. The latter was like a lifeless doll. Ringyo him be handled. Just like that. He killed so many of my chicks. Look at the mess he made. Lin Xueping still wouldn't give up. She opened the blocked door. And the situation inside was even more tragic. There were the corpses of baby chicks everywhere. And not a single one was intact. I took a closer look and saw an 8 or 9-year-old girl looking at us in horror. Her right half of the face was covered with terrifying burn scars. She was Lin Xueping's eldest granddaughter. Looking at the other half of the girl's face, which was quite delicate, I secretly thought it was a pity. Ending up with a grandmother like Lin Xueping was really a great misfortune. 1,500 yuan a week. Today is the third day. Zhang Keting suddenly looked at Lin Xueping. Only then did I realize he was talking about Zhang Peng's living expenses. This old woman is really greedy. But Zhang Keting is actually willing to spend this money. I really don't understand. That's another matter. Look at what a mess my nice house has been made into. My granddaughter is scared to death. There should be extra compensation. I mentally gave Lin Xueping a thumbs down. She's really courting death. Zhang Peng is a little psychopath. Does Zhang Keting look easy to bully? So what are your conditions? Zhang Keting suddenly smiled. I subconsciously took a step back. Lowering my head, I happened to meet Zhang Peng's eyes. His eyes were filled with deathly stillness, yet also mixed with a touch of madness. It sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't have the time to listen to Zhang Keting and Lin Xueping bickering. I made an excuse that I had to go back to work overtime and left first. On the way, the unease in my heart became more and more obvious. I always felt that Zhang Peng would do something unpredictable. But he's only 6 years old, not a teenager. What could he do? I was absent-minded and casually entered a supermarket to buy things. I just needed some daily necessities at home, and bought some vegetables by the way. But as soon as I entered the door, I felt something was wrong. Auntie, you already know, don't you? Suddenly, I heard Zhang Peng's voice from the side. The bag in my hand fell heavily to the floor. Only then did I notice that Zhang Peng was half hidden behind the entrance, with one eye looking at me. My heart was pounding like a drum. How could this be? I didn't tell anyone my password. Zhang Peng, what are you talking about? I just came back from working overtime, and bought some vegetables. I'm exhausted. I forced myself to stay calm. Don't ask me why I was so cowardly. I was wary of Zhang Peng. It was the fear of a victim towards a killer. And just because he was a child, you could never figure out what he would do next. Auntie, am I very annoying? Zhang Peng still stood there motionless. I felt a sense of unease, neither able to advance nor retreat. From my angle, I couldn't see what Zhang Peng was holding. No, you're not. Where's your father? I asked casually. Unexpectedly, Zhang Peng suddenly rushed towards me like a madman. Only then did I notice that he was holding my fruit knife. This little lunatic. But fortunately, he wasn't as tall as in my previous life. In a hurry, I directly threw my backpack at him. Zhang Peng was hit so hard that his eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the spot. When I heard that clear thud, I remembered that there was a newly bought stainless steel thermos in the backpack. It was quite heavy. I looked at Zhang Peng lying on the ground. The redness and swelling on his face hadn't subsided yet. Even so, he still tightly held the fruit knife in his hand. I tried to calm my heartbeat. Zhang Peng's sudden outburst was unexpected. Could it be just because I casually asked where his father was? Recalling the scene where Zhang Keting mercilessly hit Zhang Peng, I suddenly realized that the relationship between these father-son too wasn't as harmonious as I thought. Before, there was my sister Yu Xin to mediate between them. Now that she's gone, two people with abnormal personalities living together, the one with more power prevails. Zhang Peng is still young and can't deal with Zhang Keting. So he transferred his anger to me. How could And most importantly, how did Zhang Peng get in? I carefully looked around the house and finally found that there were indeed some differences. However, the changes were so subtle that it was really hard to notice without being careful. There were big pins hidden in the cushion of my study. If I hadn't been used to using the green side, if I had sat on it, not only that, my teacup, refrigerator, and even my cosmetics had been tampered with. Zhang Peng, are you really only 6 years old? I looked at the pile of things I cleared out, feeling suspicious and uncertain. That night, I directly took Zhang Peng to the hospital and quickly informed Zhang Keting. Zhang Keting wouldn't refuse to come and see Zhang Peng because he only had this one son. I heard from Yu Xin that Zhang Keting went fishing 2 years ago, fell into the river, and was directly hit on the lower body by a stone underneath. He lost his fertility, so he won't ignore Zhang Peng. But he's also doomed not to discipline Zhang Peng well. This time, I was really scared. I deleted all the fingerprints on the door lock that night and changed the password again. Finally, I decided to stay in a hotel. In this life, I have to at least keep myself alive. Running to stay in a hotel alone in the middle of the night when I have a house. Probably only I would do such a thing. Unexpectedly, this move really saved my life. The next day, when I was woken up by a phone call from the police station, I was stunned when I heard the news. It turned out that Lin Xueping had an accident. She had ingested an excessive amount of super glue. By the time she was discovered, she was almost dead. And my house had also been broken into. The things inside were rummaged through. Because we were neighbors upstairs and downstairs, the cases were filed together. When I arrived, the police were comforting Lin Xueping's granddaughter and grandson. Auntie, the girl suddenly summoned up the courage to call me. I was very surprised because this child had rarely spoken since she was disfigured, and had always stayed at home. I often heard Lin Xueping scolding her. What's wrong, Ming Ming? By the way, this girl's name was Wu Meng. Next to her, the little boy who looked about the same age as Zhang Peng had a dull look in his eyes, seemingly frightened out of his wits. That uncle came back again. His voice was very small, but he was trying hard to convey the message to me. I occasionally met him when he was getting some air at the door, and would casually give him a few candies or fruits. I had the habit of carrying small snacks with me. Over time, although we didn't meet often, Wu Meng and I gradually became closer. I still felt very sorry for this girl, because her parents favored sons over daughters. Even if her face had been treated in a timely manner back then, and they hadn't given up, her recovery would definitely be better than it is now. Skin grafting surgery could greatly improve her condition. Unfortunately, her parents gave up. That's why she's in this state now. Uncle, I was taken aback. The only person who had come to my place in the past 2 days, besides Zhang Keting, was no one else. So after I took Zhang Peng to the hospital last night, Zhang Keting came directly to my place to look for me. Looking at the violently smashed door lock, my heart trembled. The things in the house were in a mess, but nothing was missing. So, you didn't go home last night, but went to a hotel. The police took a statement from me. I told the truth. The police immediately went to look for Zhang Keting. But at the hospital, I only saw Zhang Peng. Zhang Keting wasn't by his side. Auntie, Dad doesn't want me anymore. Zhang Peng's facial injuries seemed to be even worse. His right eye was swollen terribly. I took out my phone. When I tried to send a message to Zhang Keting, it couldn't be sent. He had deleted me. Dad said he has a new child. I'm not obedient, so he doesn't want me anymore. Zhang Peng murmured. Giving birth? How could that be? Didn't Zhang Keting lose his fertility? Could it be that my sister was lying to me? So, Auntie, I only have you. There was a glimmer of hope in Zhang Peng's eyes. He had said this to me in my previous life too. But just because I didn't push his bike home on time, he smashed the bike pump on my face. My eyebrow bone was fractured, leaving a scar. Zhang Peng, don't worry. Auntie will help you find your dad. And the police uncle. He's even more powerful than Auntie. I comforted him and pulled the police over by the way. When Zhang Peng saw the police, he still subconsciously shrank his neck. At this age, children have an innate fear of the police. I left the two of them alone, and turned around to leave the ward. But I was directly called over by a nurse next to me. What's your relationship with Zhang Peng? She looked through the information. He's my nephew. I informed his father to come over last night. I looked at the nurse and didn't miss the surprise on her face. His father came yesterday. Is he his biological father? The nurse emphasized the word biological. I nodded. The way he was yesterday, I thought he was going to beat the child to death. I thought he was a stepfather. After beating the child, he left. He didn't care if the child lived or died. My mind was buzzing. So the child is really pitiful. He looks so well behaved. If possible, you'd better take him home. After all, you're his aunt, the nurse sighed. I disagreed. I swear I had never spoken so coldly before. Why could Zhang Peng make everyone think he was so pitiful and well behaved? Just because he was a child. So I had to take care of him, raise him and love him? Some children are born bad. Why, just because he's a child? Having such a father is already pitiful enough. A child who poisoned his own mother to death. Would you take him? You want it? Here you are. I interrupted the nurse with a cold smile. Last night in the hotel, I tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of Zhang Peng choking me, and the painful scene of myself vomiting black blood in large amounts, coupled with the corpses of baby chicks all over the floor yesterday. It was like a nightmare constantly haunting me. Suddenly, I remembered the home network monitoring software that Yu Xin had shared with me before. She said that if I didn't have time to go there, I could just check the monitoring. I politely pretended to agree, but I had never opened the software. It had been half a year now. However, when I opened the monitoring software and watched the playback, I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. In just half a year, Yu Xin had been beaten more than 50 times, not only by Zhang Peng, but also by Zhang Peng. Why didn't she call the police? I was filled with anger. This was domestic violence, a form of Banshang murder. After seeing Zhang Peng beat my sister, he knelt on the ground, slapped himself in the face, and begged her forgiveness with tears streaming down his face. And Yu Xin actually forgave him. She forgave him. For a moment, I thought she brought it upon herself. Domestic violence is either 0 times or countless times. How despicable. Just giving a sweet date after a beating, and thinking it's all over. I was so angry at her lack of resolve that my silence was deafening. I saw Zhang Peng whipping Yu Xin's head with chopsticks. I saw Zhang Peng spitting into her food. Finally, I saw Zhang Peng sprinkling 2 packets of powder into the mung bean soup, and giving it to Yu Xin, my dear sister, and she drank it. And before that, the monitoring clearly showed that Yu Xin had not agreed to buy a hamburger for Zhang Peng. When poisoning her, Zhang Peng's face was right in front of the camera, and there was a cruel and sinister smile on his little face. I could feel the deep malice even through the screen. I couldn't help but shiver. It turned out that the evil of human nature knows no age limit. So, it's likely that in my previous life, although I managed to escape countless times from Zhang Peng's unpredictable temper, in the end, he still couldn't hold back. I saved and downloaded all these recordings. This was the last bit of contribution I could make. Presumably, Yu Xin installed the camera quite secretly at that time. She probably thought that it was just another beating as usual, and that everything would be okay. Maybe she had even forgotten that she had installed the camera. In any case, she definitely didn't expect that she would die from being poisoned by her own son. I handed these pieces of evidence to the police. The police officer who took the statement quickly changed his expression. There was surprise and shock on his face, and then he held his forehead and smiled bitterly. I almost got deceived by a child. Zhang Peng hadn't been discharged from the hospital yet, because his right leg was still broken. Since Zhang Peng hadn't been found yet, I had to accompany him in the hospital first. Auntie, I sat far away from Zhang Peng. Will the police send me to jail? This sentence made me instinctively look at Zhang Peng. I thought he was scared, but he suddenly smiled at me. I'm a child. I can't go to jail, can I? In an instant, my blood froze, and a chill rushed up to the top of my head. Was this something a 6-year-old child would say? There was no innocence of a child in this smile. All I saw was a devil smiling. Even if you're a child, there are ways to deal with you. A man's voice suddenly made me look in the direction of the sound. It was that police officer. I remembered his surname was Ma. I've never seen a 6-year-old child with such a vicious nature. Lin Xueping's death is also related to this child. He replaced the water in Lin Xueping's cup with super glue. Since the amount was too large, Lin Xueping didn't suspect that it was super glue. When she came back from work, she drank more than half of it in one gulp. By the time she realized it, it was already too late. Drinking super glue? Was Lin Xueping's sense of smell or taste not working? How could she not tell the difference? Uncle, I'm still a child. I was just too curious. I wanted to see if a person would get stuck if they drank super glue. Zhang Peng had a look of eagerness for knowledge on his face. I felt a chill all over my body. A child like this being born really increases the probability of social crimes. The key is that Zhang Peng seems to know that his identity as a child is special. With a light excuse of being too curious, he tries to brush aside the fact that he caused someone's death. Just because you're a child, Officer Ma glared at him. It was obvious that he was very angry, and I could also tell that he was very helpless. I'll deal with you after catching your father. Officer Ma cursed in anger. I looked at Zhang Peng, who still had a somewhat indifferent expression on his face. He might be 6 years old physically, but his heart was definitely not that of a 6-year-old. Maybe influenced by Zhang Peng, his mental state was far more mature than that of other children. Auntie, you won't abandon me, will you? Zhang Peng suddenly turned the conversation to me. I will. I still want to live. I refused immediately. Officer Ma almost laughed at my words. An adult seriously telling a 6-year-old child that they want to live seemed very strange in anyone's eyes. Auntie, when I grow up, I'll kill you. Zhang Peng murmured the words of a devil, just like in my previous life. At such a young age, he casually talked about killing. I'm a police officer, you know. Don't you have any respect for me? Officer Ma was so angry that his eyes were wide open. After that, Officer Ma asked me some questions. Unfortunately, I didn't chat with Yu Xin much at that time, and didn't know much. When I went back to work in the company, something big happened at the hospital. Zhang Peng came back. And the first thing he did was go to the hospital to find Zhang Peng. Officer Ma happened to be at the hospital at that time. I heard that Zhang Kading found out that the so-called new child that Zhang Peng mentioned wasn't his own, so he came back to find Zhang Peng. Just when the father and son were hugging affectionately, Zhang Peng directly stabbed Zhang Kading in the neck with a fruit knife. It was a fatal blow, and blood from the carotid artery sprayed all over the wall. Officer Ma didn't even have time to call for help. Zhang Kading twitched a few times and then died. You were the one who said you didn't want me first. This time I don't want you. He looked coldly at Zhang Kading falling to the ground. Without even thinking, the scene at that time must have been extremely terrifying. If it were a revenge killing committed by an adult, maybe others could understand it. But this was something done by a 6-year-old child. Is XYY syndrome really that terrifying? Presumably, even Zhang Kading didn't expect that he would die at the hands of his own son. As for the subsequent judgment of Zhang Peng, Officer Ma mentioned it to me. Since all his other relatives were gone, I was the only one left. But I refused to live with him. Officer Ma didn't try to persuade me much. It was precisely because I had witnessed the child's cruelty with my own eyes that my refusal was within his expectations. Zhang Peng asked to see me one last time. Auntie, I only have you. His eyes were misty with tears. When you grow up, you want to kill me. I won't let you finish. I interrupted him. You won't have the chance to grow up. I didn't believe that Zhang Peng could survive on his own, because there were people specially assigned to watch over him, and his desire to do evil couldn't be vented, so he would drive himself to death. Auntie, you really liked that uncle before, didn't you? Zhang Peng smiled cutely. His face had returned to its previous fairness and tenderness. I didn't immediately understand which uncle he was talking about. At that time, Mom was still alive. Unfortunately, I told that uncle that you would have dinner with another uncle at night, and that you didn't come back to sleep. Then that uncle left in a huff. Zhang Peng seemed to want to provoke me, but I watched his self-directed and self-acted performance with a blank expression. Sure enough, several of my relationships in my previous life ended without any result. Every time I was determined to bring my boyfriend back to introduce to my sister, as if to meet the parents, but the next day, I would be broken up with for no apparent reason. I thought they disliked my poor conditions. Who would have thought it was Zhang Peng's doing? Maybe because I had prepared myself mentally. When I heard him say it with my own ears this time, I felt relieved instead. Why aren't you angry? You should be angry. Seeing my indifferent attitude, Zhang Peng's little face suddenly turned red. He was very excited. Let me tell you another secret, okay? I didn't want to pay attention to him anymore. Last time I was in your room. Were you surprised? I did care about this a bit. It was really fun to use Mom's fingerprint. He was not stupid but terrifyingly smart. I didn't want to listen to him anymore. Auntie, don't go. I'm really sorry. Take me home. I promise I'll be good and never kill kittens, puppies, or baby chicks again. Zhang Peng's voice still echoed behind me. However, I quickened my pace. In this life, I just want to live, and now I've achieved that. As for what kind of life Zhang Peng will have in the future, I don't want to know. I can only hope that the person watching over him will be tough. So when I finally learned that the person watching over him was replaced by Officer Ma, I showed a sincere smile on my face for the first time. It's really great. The end.